Welcome, race fans, to another episode of Photo Finish. I'm your host, Steve-O. On this episode, we're going to be talking about the 150th running of the Kentucky Derby. But before we get into that, I want to remind you that we are sponsored by Spinnable Sports. Go to spinnablesports.com for all your sports news and notes every day. As a reminder, I want you to go subscribe to this podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify. If you're listening on YouTube, or watching on YouTube, we appreciate you. Give us a like and share the show around to your friends and family. As I mentioned, Spinnable Sports is where you can find all of past episodes of Photo Finish. And I want to encourage you to go listen to our sister show, the Rational Confidence Podcast. I appreciate Haps and Fresh for having me on for their draft preview edition. We had a lot of fun doing a mock draft ahead of the NFL draft just a couple of weeks ago. And so go check out their show as well. Before we get into it, got a couple of news and notes for you before we talk about the 150th running of the Kentucky Derby from Louisville, Kentucky. If you've been listening to the show for any length of time, we've been following this Bob Baffert suspension. This is his third and should be final year of being suspended from racing horses at Churchill Downs. Originally, Churchill Downs imposed a 2-year ban on Bob Baffert. And so he thought he was going to be able to run horses this year, and they've decided to extend that ban for another year. There's some litigation going on. He had a horse, Muth, that would have been probably the Derby favorite, if not one of the favorites. Muth's owner filed a lawsuit to try and get him in the Kentucky Derby, and a judge denied the request for injunction. So Baffert's suspension is upheld, and no Baffert horses, hopefully for the last year of that third-year suspension. Moving on to the Saturday card at Churchill Downs, before we get to the 150th running of the Kentucky Derby, the Run for the Roses, I'm going to look at a couple of races on the undercard. We're not going to go through every race, but there's 4 undercard races that I like a lot and just want to point out before we get to the Kentucky Derby. The first one is going to post at 12:36 on Saturday. That's May the 4th. This is the Grade 2 turf sprint, 5.5 furlongs on the turf track. Let's take a look at a couple of horses I want to point out to you. The one, couldn't figure out what to do with Candyman Rocket. I like Bill Mott and Junior Alvarado, especially on turf. I like Mott on turf. I think he's a better trainer for turf than he is dirt. But this horse has never run on the turf. 30 to 1 in the morning line. I like those. I like that number. This horse has shown that he's won on the dirt. Kind of struggled his last time out, Gulfstream. But for a turf horse, Candyman Rocket's one that I wouldn't just toss because he's 31 in the morning line. 2, Front Run, the Fed. I didn't see a whole lot here. One ran in some, decent size races, but has not done anything for quite some time. His last win was Keeneland in April of last year, but since then hasn't done a whole lot. Excuse me, I missed one there. There's a win back in July of last year, but since then hadn't done a whole lot. Ran in some Grade 2s and just 6th, 8th, 10th, 12th. Not the form that I want to see coming in. The 3, Coppola, is interesting. This horse has 19 starts, 7 wins. A couple of races back at Gulfstream Park. He won with some really good speed numbers, but they were lesser quality races. In the February race, $125 stakes race, ran at 5 furlongs, came back in March. 4 weeks later, won a $100,000 stakes race, and then they put him in a Grade 2 at Keeneland, where he finished 9th. So the numbers are almost there. I don't think he's got quite what it takes to win this race. Interesting horse, 10 to 1. Probably going to pass on the 3, but it's one I got a hard look at. I just didn't write off right away. Another horse that I like, or a horse that I do like, is Notorious. This is a Diamato Pratt connection. his last race was at Santa Anita for the Breeders' Cup. Finished fifth in the turf sprint, however, ran a 124, so there's nothing wrong with that number. Got beat by another horse in this race, several horses, but one of those was in this race. Before that, I ran at Del Mar, ran a 123, got a win at Del Mar in a grade 3 race. So this horse has ran a lot of big races. I think it's consistently hit that 120 number here. Again, we're using time form numbers, but 120 is a good number. And so you've got to consider the 4 up top. 5, Mustache, won a couple of races. Won his last race back in April. Keeneland, 5.5 furlongs, ran a 111 with Luis Saez on board. But overall, I just don't think he's got the speed numbers to compete with a couple of other horses in this race. The 6 is interesting. Philo Di Ariana, Mark Casse, Johnny V. Had 3 wins in a row back in July and August of last year, including a couple of grade 2 wins. And then they put him on a synthetic race. He finished second. And then a couple of grade 3s where he didn't fare as well. They brought him back at Gulfstream Park this year in $92,000 allowance race, and he finished third. So he does have a start under his belt. The 6 underneath would be interesting if you're looking for a horse to bump up your exotics and hope that he can return to the same form he was in July of last year. 7, Hour Shot, Javier Castellanos on board. Ran a 118 the last time out, which is a good number, but finished 4th to a couple of other horses in this race. And so for that reason, I don't think I'm going to use the 7 just because he's been beaten by several other horses in this race, even though his number was really good last time out. The 8, here's a horse I like, Mischief Magic. Charlie Appleby is your trainer. Frankie Dettori gets your mount. This horse finished second at Keeneland just a few weeks ago in the turf grade 2 Shakertown race. Ran a 118 though. It's a good number. You know how I feel about Frankie on turf, and so this is a horse I'm looking to use. I'll have some of the 8. 9, Bad Beat Brian. I think this is a horse we've talked about before. He was in one of the undercard races last year in the turf sprint. Last year finished 6th. If you go back and look at that, just hasn't been in good form. Even though the numbers are decent, just hasn't really been in good form. So I'm passing on the 9. 10, Big Invasion. Christophe Clement, Joel Rosario. I like Clement is one of your better turf trainers. I like him, particularly in longer turf races. I don't think of him as more of a turf sprint specialist. But this horse has some good numbers. I like Joel Rosario, great jockey. So this is a horse I'm going to be looking to use. I don't know that I like the 10 to win, but I will use some of the 10. The last horse is race, Mr. Tyler G's on board. Won his last 2 turf races, but just hasn't run quality races. He won basically 2 $60,000 allowance races. So going on to the 12, Arrest Me Red. I said the 11 was the last horse in this race. There's several more horses. Arrest Me Red is a horse that's ran in some pretty big races. Ran in turf sprint here last year on Kentucky Derby Day. Finished 5th. Ran in the Grade 1 Jaipur. Belmont Day, Belmont Park, finished 7th. Not a whole lot here from this horse. He did get gelded in August of last year, came back, finished 6th. But his 2 races this year, 2nd and 1st, although those were on synthetic surfaces. I like Wesley Ward. I think he is a turf sprint specialist, but for whatever reason has not been able to find it with Arrest Me Red. 13, Iman. Paco Lopez is on board here. Continuously improving his last few starts, but I just don't think he has not really been able to get it done. I don't think he's got the speed to keep up with all the other horses in this race. The 14 is Cogburn. Irad Ortiz is on board here. Steve Asmussen is your trainer. Didn't have a great showing in the turf sprint at Kentucky Downs in September. That's a little bit different track. It's got some hills and some turns, and just horses aren't used to it. It's more of a kind of British style track. So I can't really fault him for not doing well at Kentucky Downs. Did win his 3 races prior to that. It's got a good speed figure. I don't hate the 14 here. It's another horse I'm going to make a note to look into. 15, Axthelm. I don't see a whole lot here from this Saffie Joseph horse. 16, Panther Island. Ran a 118, a couple starts back, which is a good number, but just hasn't really got it done. 13 starts, 6 wins in a couple of kind of lower allowance races. Hasn't really done it in bigger races. 17, Sketch. This British horse, first off a claim for Murphy here. Cannon's on board. Just don't see a whole lot based on what he's done overseas. Has never won. Well, actually won his first race, but hasn't done anything since then. Don't think the numbers are going to equate very well here. So 10, 4, and 8, I'm going to be looking at some combination of those. I like the 4 on top. Motorious is the horse that I most like here. But there's several other horses I'm going to be taking a look at. As I said, the 10 and the 8, the 14, I don't hate the possibly going back and looking at the 6 and I believe it was the 3 that was also interesting horse to use underneath, as well as the 1, the Bill Mott horse that's never run on turf. I mean, what do you do with that horse? You may have to use it underneath. So several options here. Should be a good betting race. Should be wide open. So be interesting to see what the odds are doing closer to post time. It's also going to be interesting to see how the track holds up from what may be a lot of rain on Friday. So, the turf track tends to break down quicker than the main track. And obviously they can seal the main track, but they can't, they just have to be careful with not overusing a wet turf course. So we'll see what the conditions are like on Saturday. Let's go on to race 6. This is your Grade 1 Derby City Distaff. 7 furlongs on dirt for fillies and mares. Let's look at the 1 here, 3 Witches. Flavion Pratt is on board. Ran a 118 her last time out in the Grade 2 Santa Monica at Santa Anita. That's a good number. I like the 1 here. There's another horse I like a little bit better that we'll get to in just a minute, but I don't hate the 1. I will be using some of the 1. 2, another horse I don't mind. Johnny B's on board. Ran a 119 last time out. It's a good number. Just finished second to Red Carpet Ready. Ran a 118 before that. Won a Grade 2 back at Gulfstream Park. So I like the 2, 10 to 1 on the morning line. I like those odds. We'll see what her numbers do closer to race time. The 3 Flying Connection. I like Florent Giroux on board. She has won a couple of races in 3 out of her last 4 with second in there in the Grade 1 Apple Blossom back at Oaklawn Park. But I think she is more suited for a little bit further distance. She has not ran at this distance before. Most of her success has been a mile or more. So, I think that this shorter race is not going to suit the 3. The 4, Wesley Ward, Joe Rosario. Wesley Ward's a great sprint specialist. I think he's better as a turf sprint specialist. But look at the 4, Chi-Town Lady. She's coming off a win in her last start, although it was a $50,000 stakes race. So a little bit stiffer competition here. Ran a 107. I just don't think the 4's got the numbers in this race. So I probably will not be using any of the 4. The 5, Spirit Wind, Saffie Joseph, Jose Ortiz. I think Saffie's a better turf trainer than he is dirt trainer. This horse, he just picked up back in March, where she ran a 120 in a Grade 3 at Gulfstream Park, finished 3rd. But that 120, that's a big number. I don't mind the 5 here if you want to use the 5 underneath to try and boost up your exotics, depending on what her odds are going to be closer to post time, 8-1 on the morning line. 6, American Band, even though she won her last 3 races, I've scratched the 3 here. I just don't think that she can compete with the quality of the horses in this race. Although the $250,000 stakes race was by far her best quality competition, and she won, running 111. So she's getting better. Maybe I shouldn't have scratched her at 30 on the morning line. Her speed numbers are continuing to improve, even though she's 5 years old and has 9 starts on her belt. But I don't think she's seen the level of competition like she has in this race. 7, Alpha Star, Tyler G's on board. This horse has 4 wins in her last 5 starts, with a second thrown in there. Ran a 120 last time out at Keeneland, where she won the Grade 1 Madison. That's a really big number for the horses in this race. I don't think any other horse comes close with those numbers. So I like the 7 here. Dare I say you could even solo the 7 if you're looking at multi-race bets. I think 7's by far the best horse in this race. The 8, Sterling Silver, Javier Castellano's on board. She's got a few wins, 21 starts, 7 wins. Didn't fare great. Keeneland a few weeks ago finished 4th to 3 other horses in this race. Has been claimed, or hasn't been claimed, but the owners switch trainers. I don't like horse first off the claim in a race of this magnitude. The 9, Red Carpet Ready, Luis Saez. This is a horse that finished 3rd at that Grade 1 Madison back at Keeneland that we've discussed. 118 in that race, 116 before that. I think you got to use the 9 underneath. Red Carpet Ready, should hit the board in this race. So, of course, I like. The 10, Valva, Irad Ortiz on board, finished 2nd at the Grade 1 Madison, ran 117. Got beat by Alpha Star. Did beat Red Carpet Ready, even though Red Carpet Ready had a little bit higher of a speed figure. The 10 again is a horse that I think you've got to consider. As I said, I think you can almost solo the 7. The 10 does have a 121 last year with Johnny V on board in Grade 2 Raven, which is enough to give 7 a run for her money. But, I think just looking at the 7s, Alpha Star's numbers and what she's done, she just wins or finishes 2nd by a small margin. So I think the 7 comes out on top. So I'll be using the 7 on top, some combination of the 1, 2, 9, and 10. I may have talked myself into a win place show bet on the 6 if she's 30-1 on the morning line. That's a horse that could surprise folks. That's how I'm playing the Derby City Distaff. Let's go skip on down to race 8, which is the Pate Mile. And there's some other good races on this card. I'm not covering every race. I'm trying to keep this podcast under an hour if possible. And so we're not covering every race. But there's a couple that I want to look at besides the Kentucky Derby on this card. One of them is race 8 here. It's Pate Mile, Grade 2 race, being ran on the dirt, obviously at a mile. I'm not going to go through every horse in this race. I'm going to highlight a couple that I like. The 2 Beeline, Riley Mott, Irad Ortiz, 2 for 2. This colt has won at Gulfstream Park, both of his races, 105, 109. Not bad. It's a horse I consider using underneath. I'm not going to talk about the horses I've scratched through in this race for sake of time. Let's look at the 8. Top Connor, Chad Brown, Jose Ortiz, lightly raced. This horse raced in the Grade 1 Bluegrass. They were obviously thinking he may have what it takes to get in the Kentucky Derby, but he finished 6th. But he ran 120, so good number. He just got beat by some really good horses, including Sierra Leone, who is in the Kentucky Derby. The 9's also interesting. 1 win in his 2 starts. Win was on synthetic, but came back at a $400,000 stakes race at Keeneland and significantly improved. Went from an 86 speed number to a 108. That's a big jump. So if he could improve again, 30 to 1 in the morning line, that's a big number. I may look at using the 9 underneath, just hoping that he takes another jump up in class in this race. The 11, Vlahos, Eddie Maldonado's on board, 1 for 1. But we got a new trainer here. Doug O'Neill was taking over. This horse won its maiden race, ran a 122. So the 11 is a horse that I think you got to look at using, just being lightly raced and running a big number the first time out. Can he repeat it? It's always the question. The 12, this Godolphin horse is Nash. He's being trained by Brad Cox, being ridden by Florent Giroux. This is a horse that I'm going to be using. Ran a 119 and 117 last couple of races out. I like Nash, great connections. So that's a horse that I think you've got to use up top as well. So I'm going to be using some combination of the 12, the 11, and the 8. Probably those are the ones I'm going to look at up top. Probably using the 9 and the 2 underneath. The 9 could really boost up your exactas and your trifectas. If you're looking for a horse at longer odds, he could possibly take another huge step forward. Before we get to the Kentucky Derby, one more race I want to just hit on just briefly, and that is the 11th race. This is your Turf Classic. You got Naval Power here, which is Charlie Appleby, Frankie Dettori on board here. Ran at Keeneland in the Maker's Mark Mile. Just didn't quite have enough that day. Got beat by Master of the Seas, finished second, but ran a 125. And that is a big number with Frankie on board. I think, I don't know that Frankie can get it done in the Derby in a long shot, but I think he gets it done in the race before the Derby. So I like the 11, Naval Power, in race 11. Let's move on now to the Kentucky Derby. As I stated earlier, the post time for this race is going to be 6:57 p.m. on Saturday. It's the 150th running of the Kentucky Derby. It is the fastest 2 minutes in sports. And we've got a great race. There are just quality horses in this race. You'll see as we go through, I've already handicapped the race. In the past, I've kind of done this live without, kind of any preconceived notions and just kind of going through live. But there's too many horses in this race. I couldn't do it today. So I had to go ahead and look at some horses. I had to narrow down, and then we'll try and figure out how to put it all together. So we will talk about every horse, but I'm not going to go in depth on some of the ones that I've already scratched out. First, let's talk about pace of this race. The 1, Dornoch, is a front runner. His running style is speed, 118 early speed, 79 closing speed, according to time form. The trainer's already come out and said that he wants Dornoch to break well off the inside and just run as far as he can, as fast as he can, as far as he can, until he can't run anymore. And so, that leads me to believe we may have a fast pace in the Derby. I don't know that the 1 can keep that pace. He did win the Fountain of Youth at Gulfstream Park back in March. He won Grade 2 at Aqueduct last year. Came back at Keeneland in the Bluegrass, finished 4th to some pretty good horses. But he never got out in front in that race. And this horse wants to be in front. If he gets in front, can he stay there? I don't know. I don't think this is a race where, if it is truly a really fast pace and Dornoch setting the pace, I don't think he's gonna win. If he gets out to the lead and it's not a fast pace and it's a little bit slower, then absolutely the 1 can hit the board. And so I think you got to consider using the 1 in your exotics and your multi-race bets, just in case the pace is not light and fast like his trainer has kind of indicated that he wants it to be. Let's look at another horse, or the second horse in this race, Sierra Leone, who did win the Bluegrass, also won the Grade 2 Risen Star before that at Fairgrounds. Tyler G gets the mount. Chad Brown's your trainer. This horse is 3 for 4 with a second place by nose. He's got the numbers that I like. You can see 89 to 108 to 109 to 116. He's steadily improving his speed numbers. I don't know that we've seen the best from this horse yet. The 2 position concerns me a little bit, that Sierra Leone may get buried. 20 horses in this race. It's going to be hard for him to get a clean trip. This is a horse that likes to come from off the pace, has very good closing speed. So the question is, can he get a clean trip? Will he have a lane to run? But he's got the numbers to win this race. I'm going to be using some of the 2. I just don't know if it's going to be up top or underneath yet. The 3, Mystic Dan, a horse that's kind of improved a little bit. Won a race on a muddy track. Keep an eye on the weather. But I think the weather on Saturday, as of right now, should be pretty good. I just don't see a lot from Mystic Dan. Finished 3rd in the Arkansas Derby. Like I said, did win that Grade 3 at Oaklawn Park before that. But his speed numbers are all over the place. I just don't see any consistency here for Mystic Dan, so I'm not using the 3. 4, Catching Freedom. Brad Cox, Flavion Pratt. If you're looking at jockeys, I think Brad Cox may think this is his better horse in the race, putting Flavion on board. He did win the Louisiana Derby back in March to get in this race. Finished 3rd at the Risen Star before that. Only ran a 112. I think this horse is just not going to have what it takes to compete with some of the other horses in this race when you look at other speed numbers. 5, Catalytic. It's interesting. Finished 2nd in the Florida Derby to Fierceness, but he finished 2nd by 13 lengths. So, 111 is not a bad number. His numbers are steadily improving. But this Saffie Joseph horse, I just don't think he has what it takes. There's just a lot of horses I like a lot better. 6, Just Steel, Dwayne Lucas. I've already talked about Lucas likes to run his horses. 11 starts already for this 3-year-old. That's insane. And only 2 wins. He finished 2nd in the Arkansas Derby to get into this race. Ran a 118, which is his best number to date, but his speed numbers are all over the place. And I have serious doubts that he could replicate it in this race. Although I'd like to see Lucas get a Derby win under his belt. 7, Honor Marie. Just don't see a whole lot here. Ran 2nd at the Louisiana Derby to get in this race. 5th at the Risen Star. Did win the Kentucky Jockey Club race back at Churchill Downs in November. Numbers are improving, but I don't think Honor Marie has what it takes to win this race or to hit the board. Let's go on to the 8, Just a Touch. Brad Cox, Florent Giroux, ran a 120 last time out at in the Bluegrass Stakes at Keeneland. Finished 2nd to Sierra Leone. That's a good number. I think that's a number that it's going to take to compete to win this race. Sitting in the 8th position, this horse likes to be towards the front. If he can get a clean trip towards the front, I like the 8 to hit the board. This is a horse that we're going to come back to in just a second. The 9 has scratched. Encino won the Grade 3 Lexington. I mentioned I was at Keeneland, saw this race live. This was not a horse that I won any money on. I did very well at Keeneland, but did not win any money on this horse. Liked a couple other horses better, and he just surprised me with Florent Giroux on board in the Lexington. I'm not going to talk anymore about a horse that's already scratched from this race. But it's a shame that he did. I think he would have been interesting in the Derby. The 10, Tio Password, horse from Japan. There are 2 Japanese horses in this race. I don't see anything out of the 10. But the 11's interesting. Forever Young. 10 to 1 in the morning line. Ran and won ran a grade 3 back in Dubai. One of the King Abdullah dual races for $1.5 million. Won another $1 million race back 35 days ago. Numbers are steadily improving. I don't know that he's got what it takes to compete with some of the other horses in this race, but I think we've seen some of these foreign horses get close in the Derby. I think Forever Young could hit the board. So I'm not going to toss the 11. I'm just not sure how I'm going to use him. 12, Track Phantom, Joel Rosario, Steve Asmussen. Had a good run back late last year, first race of this year, where he won 3 in a row. 7 starts, 3 wins. Finished 4th in the Louisiana Derby, 2nd in the Risen Star in the slop. But I just don't think he's got what it takes to compete with the horses in this race. The 13, West Saratoga, 50 to 1 in the morning line. Not going to spend a lot of time on this horse. Finished 2nd in the JR Stakes on synthetic surface to get into this race. Got beat by Endlessly, who's also in this race because of his win in the JR Stakes. You'll see here the 14. Ran a 113 last time out. It's improving each time, but I just don't like this horse. Ran on turf before running twice on synthetic. Won the JR Stakes to get into this race and has never run on dirt before. Don't think Kentucky Derby is the time where you want to be seeing if your horse can run on dirt. So I will not be using the 14. The 15, Domestic Product, Chad Brown, Irad Ortiz. Great connections. Won the Tampa Bay Derby. Finished 2nd in the Holy Bull. But his best speed numbers are 101. And I don't think he's got anything close to what it takes to compete in this race. 16, Grand Mo, the first. Victor Barbosa Jr. is your trainer. Jaramillo is your jockey. Finished 3rd in the Florida Derby, 3rd in the Tampa Bay Derby. Don't see anything in the speed numbers to indicate that he could compete. 50 to 1 in the morning line. Let's go on to Fierceness, which is your morning line favorite. 5 to 2 in the morning line. 17 horse in this race. I will be out of the 16 stall right now. Everybody's bumping up with that scratch from Encino. Ty Pletcher, Johnny V's your jockey. This horse ran Gulfstream Park in the Florida Derby, won going away by 13 lengths, ran a 124 number, which is just it's a good number. It's quick. He also won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile race, which is back in November, which is the kind of the premier prep race to see how a horse is going to do, the following year. That's the race that you win that and you're on the map for the Triple Crown races. In between, though, the Florida Derby and the Breeders' Cup Juvenile race was the Holy Bull at Gulfstream Park. He ran a 101, finished 3rd, just kind of didn't have a great race, but he got bumped at the start on both sides. He didn't have a clean trip. And so, it just, was uninspiring. But thoroughbreds are kind of fickle. If they don't get a clean trip, then, sometimes they just don't run as hard and they shut it down. But this is the horse that I think is the horse to beat. He's the morning line favorite for a reason. You've got to use the 17. You got to hope he's got a clean trip. He is the horse to beat. Let's look at the 18 real quick. This is Stronghold. He's won his last 2. Every race he's ran has been over 100 speed figure. And we're using time form. We're not using buyer numbers. Buyer numbers probably not over 100 in every race. 3 wins, 3 seconds. So he's hit the board every time. He won the Santa Anita to get into this race. But ultimately, I don't know that he's got what it takes to compete. If you want to use the 18 underneath, I don't hate that. 20 to 1 in the morning line, that could give you some value. You just, again, if he gets a clean trip, he could be out towards the front. And so if he gets on or near the lead, and gets a clean trip, he's one to watch. I wouldn't toss the 18. The 19 Resilience, Bill Ma Jr. Alvarado won the Wood Memorial in April to get into this race. Ran a 112. That was his best number to date. Improving, but he's going to have to take another big jump to win this race, which could happen, but I don't see it. The 20 Society Man. Here's your Frankie Dettori horse. He got a mount in the Kentucky Derby, which is one of his goals this year. He's kind of scrappy underdog mentality. He's 50 years old, still riding in high quality races. Finished second. This horse finished second in the Wood Memorial. Won a race on a muddy track at Aqueduct before that. I'm going to have a win bet on the 20, 51 on the morning line. Could this be your country house? Could Frankie get his retirement send-off story? Yes, it's possible. Just because it's Frankie. That's the only reason I'm going to have a win bet. I'm not using the 20 in any of my exotics. But I will have a win bet, maybe win place bet, just to cover myself, just in case, because it's Frankie. Let's look at the 21 Epic Ride, who is in now because of the scratch. He finished third at the Bluegrass, Keeneland, to Sierra Leone, just a touch. His numbers are getting better each time. It's not a horse that I immediately scratch. Won a couple races on synthetic. The Bluegrass was his first start on dirt. But ran a 116, which was a good number. Same jockey on board, Bashiza. I don't hate the 21 horse if you want to use him underneath at 30-1 to bump up your exotics. The last horse, just in case he gets in, is Mugatu. Don't see a whole lot out of this horse. Finished fifth in the Bluegrass, which is apparently enough points to get him in. Ran a 107, which is his best number to date, but I feel like that's an outlier. He's kind of raced on turf and synthetic before this. Not a whole lot of success on dirt. So if he draws in, I would not expect anything at all from Mugatu. So let's go back up to the top of this form, and I think I've got it written down how I'm playing it. I like the 17, the 8, the 2 on the top, 1, the 11, the 18, the 20, the 21. Horses that I'm looking at underneath. I don't know how I'm going to put it together just yet. I like Fierceness to win. I think you got to use Fierceness in your multi-race bets. I think the 2 Sierra Leone is interesting. The rail position kind of worries me a little bit. Same with Dornoch, but I think Dornoch could be out front. I don't think Sierra Leone's going to go to the lead, and I'm afraid that he could get buried. And so I like the 17 and the 8. 8, just a touch, 10-1 on the morning lines. Really impressive showing in the Bluegrass to Sierra Leone, but he's got a better position. I think he's going to be out front. Again, if the race kind of breaks down, if it's not a super fast pace, I like the 8 more than I like the 1. So I'm probably playing a 17-8 exact box. I'll be using some combination of 17 over 8-2, 111, 18-20, trying to solo Fierceness up top and hope we get some prices underneath. Ultimately, I think there's only a handful of horses that can win this race. Fierceness, just a touch. I think Dornoch, if under the right scenario, could win this race. Sierra Leone's another one that I like to win. Outside of those 4 horses, I'm not sure. Many others have a chance to win, but I think several have a chance to hit the board. We talked about that Japanese horse, Forever Young. I think that horse could hit the board. I don't think he's got quite what it takes to win. I don't know I'd use him up top, but I'd certainly use him underneath in your trifectas, your superfectas. He could definitely hit the board. So that's kind of how I see the race. I think if got in my head, I've got Fierceness to win. He's just been the most impressive in the prep races leading up to the Derby. Won by 13 lengths at Gulfstream Park. I believe the horses that have won the Florida Derby have typically, showed well in the Kentucky Derby, or have kind of been your morning line favorites leading into the race the last few years. I think Forte came out of the Florida Derby and unfortunately was scratched last year or 2 years ago. That was a horse that looked impressive coming out of the Florida Derby. That I would like to see him run in the Kentucky Derby. But, that's kind of how I see the race. I've talked enough. Just a reminder, go to Spinnable Sports. Take a look at the YouTube page. There may be some videos being posted in the next few weeks from my trip from Keeneland. Take a look, keep your eye on that. And as always, I hope you pick some winners. Good luck. This has been Photo Finish. I'm your host, Steve-O.